The Boeing A-64 Apache is an American four-blade, twin-turboshaft attack helicopter with a tailwheel-type landing gear arrangement and a tandem cockpit for a two-man crew. It features a nose-mounted sensor suite for target acquisition and night vision systems. It is armed with a 30mm, 1.18 in, M230 chain gun carried between the main landing gear, under the aircraft's forward fuselage, and 4 hardpoints mounted on stub-wing pylons for carrying armament and stores, typically a mixture of AGM-114 Hellfire missiles and Hydra 70 rocket pods. The A-64 has a large amount of systems redundancy to improve combat survivability. The Apache originally started as the Model 77 developed by Hughes Helicopters for the United States Army's Advanced Attack Helicopter program to replace the A-1 Cobra. The prototype A-64 was first flown on September 30, 1975. The U.S. Army selected the A-64 over the Bell A-63 in 1976, and later approved full production in 1982. After purchasing Hughes Helicopters in 1984, McDonnell Douglas continued A-64 production and development. The helicopter was introduced to U.S. Army service in April 1986. The first production A-64D Apache Longbow, an upgraded Apache variant, was delivered to the Army in March 1997. Production has been continued by Boeing Defense, Space and Security. Over 2,000 A-64s have been produced to date. The U.S. Army is the primary operator of the A-64. It has also become the primary attack helicopter of multiple nations, including Greece, Japan, Israel, the Netherlands, Singapore, and the United Arab Emirates, as well as being produced under license in the United Kingdom as the Augusta-Westland Apache. American A-64s have served in conflicts in Panama, the Persian Gulf, Kosovo, Afghanistan, and Iraq. Israel used the Apache in its military conflicts in Lebanon and the Gaza Strip. British and Dutch Apaches have seen deployments in wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Development: Advanced Attack Helicopter. Following the cancellation of the A-56 Cheyenne in 1972, in favor of projects like the U.S. Air Force A-10 Thunderbolt II and the Marine Corps Harrier, the United States Army sought an aircraft to fill an anti-armor attack role that would still be under Army command. The 1948 Key West Agreement forbade the Army from owning combat fixed-wing aircraft. The Army wanted an aircraft better than the A-1 Cobra in firepower, performance, and range. It would have the maneuverability for terrain following nap of the Earth, no flying. To this end, the U.S. Army issued a request for proposals, RFP, for an advanced attack helicopter, on November 15, 1972. As a sign of the importance of this project, in September 1973 the Army designated its 5 most important projects as the Big Five, with the A included. Proposals were submitted by Bell, Boeing Vertol/Grumman Team, Hughes, Lockheed, and Sikorsky. In July 1973, the U.S. Department of Defense selected finalists Bell and Hughes Aircraft's Tulco Aircraft Division, later Hughes Helicopters. This began the Phase 1 of the competition. Each company built prototype helicopters and went through a flight test program. Hughes Model 77/Ya-64A prototype first flew on September 30, 1975, while Bell's Model 409/Ya-63A prototype first flew on October 1, 1975. After evaluating the test results, the Army selected Hughes Ya-64A over Bell's Ya-63A in 1976. Reasons for selecting the Ya-64A included its more damage-tolerant four-blade main rotor and the instability of the Ya-63's tricycle landing gear arrangement. The A-64A then entered Phase 2 of the A program, under which 3 pre-production A-64s would be built. Additionally, the 2 Ya-64A flight prototypes and the ground test unit were upgraded to the same standard. Weapons and sensor systems were integrated and tested during this time, including the laser-guided AGM-114 Hellfire missile. Development of the Hellfire missile had begun in 1974, originally known by the name of Helicopter-Launched, Fire and Forget Missile, Hellfire being a shortened acronym for the purpose of arming helicopter platforms with an effective anti-tank missile. Into production. In 1981, 3 pre-production A-64s were handed over to the U.S. Army for operational test too. The Army testing was successful, but afterward it was decided to upgrade to the more powerful T-700 GE-701 version of engine, rated at 1,690 shop, 1,260 kilowatts. The A-64 was named the Apache in late 1981, keeping with the Army's traditional use of American Indian tribal names for its helicopters, and it was approved for full-scale production in 1982. In 1983, the first production helicopter was rolled out at Hughes Helicopters facility at Mesa, Arizona. Hughes Helicopters was purchased by McDonnell Douglas for $470 million in 1984. The helicopter unit later became part of the Boeing company with the merger of Boeing and McDonnell Douglas in August 1997. In 1986, the incremental or flyaway cost for the A-64A was $7 million and the average unit cost was approximately $13.9 million based on total costs. During the 1980s, McDonnell Douglas studied an A-64B, featuring an updated cockpit, new fire control system and other upgrades. In 1988, funding was approved for a multi-stage upgrade program to improve sensor and weapon systems. Technological advance led to the program's cancellation in favor of more ambitious changes. In August 1990, development of the A-64D Apache Longbow was approved by the Defense Acquisition Board. The first A-64D prototype flew on April 15, 1992, prototype testing ended in April 1995. During testing, 6 A-64D helicopters were pitted against a numerically superior group of A-64A helicopters. The results demonstrated the A-64D to have a 7 times increase in survivability and 4 times increase in lethality compared to the A-64A. On October 13, 1995, full-scale production was approved. A $1.9 billion 5-year contract was signed in August 1996 to rebuild 232 A-64s to A-64D standard. On March 17, 1997, the first production A-64D first flew. It was delivered on March 31. Portions of the Apache are produced by various aerospace firms. AgustaWestland has produced number of components for the Apache, both for the international market and for the British Army's AgustaWestland Apache. Since 2004, Korea Aerospace Industries has been the sole manufacturer of the Apache's fuselage. Fuselage production had previously been performed by Teledyne Ryan Aeronautical. The transfer of fuselage production led to a prolonged legal dispute between Teledyne Ryan and Boeing. The A-64D program cost a total of $11 billion through 2007. In April 2006, Boeing was awarded a $67.6 million fixed-price contract for the remanufacture of several existing U.S. A-64s to the A-64D configuration. Between May 2009 and July 2011, a further 5 contracts were issued to remanufacture batches of A-64s to the upgraded D variant. Since 2008, nations operating the older A-64A have been urged to undertake modernization programs to become A-64DS, as Boeing and the U.S. Army plans to terminate support for the A variants in the near future. Design. Overview. The A-64 Apache has a 4-blade main rotor and a 4-blade tail rotor. The crew sits in tandem, with the pilot sitting behind and above the co-pilot/gunner. Both crew members are capable of flying the aircraft and performing methods of weapon engagements independently. The A-64 is powered by 2 General Electric T700 turboshaft engines with high-mounted exhausts on either side of the fuselage. Various models of engines have been used on the Apache. Those in British service use engines from Rolls-Royce. In 2004, General Electric Aviation began producing more powerful T700 GE701D engines, rated at 2000 shop, 1500 kilowatts, for A-64DS. The crew compartment has shielding between the cockpits, such that at least one crew member can survive hits. The compartment and the rotor blades are designed to sustain a hit from 23 mm, 0.91 in, rounds. The airframe includes some 2,500 pounds, 1,100 kilograms, of protection and has a self-sealing fuel system to protect against ballistic projectiles. The aircraft was designed to meet the crashworthiness requirements of MIL STD 1290, which specifies minimum requirement for crash impact energy attenuation to minimize crew injuries and fatalities. This was achieved through incorporation of increased structural strength, crash-worthy landing gear, seats, and fuel system. On a standard day where temperatures are 59 degrees Fahrenheit, 15 degrees Celsius, the A64 has a vertical rate of climb of 1,775 feet per minute, 541 m/min, and a service ceiling of 21,000 feet, 6,400 m. However, on a hot day where temperatures are 70 degrees Fahrenheit, 21 degrees Celsius, its vertical rate of climb is reduced to 1,595 fpm, 486 m/min, and service ceiling is reduced to 19,400 feet, 5,900 m, due to less dense air. Avionics and targeting. One of the revolutionary features of the Apache was its helmet-mounted display, the Integrated Helmet and Display Sighting System, AHDSS. Among its capabilities, either the pilot or gunner can slave the helicopter's 30 mm automatic M230 chain gun to their helmet, making the gun track head movements to point where they look. The M230E1 can be alternatively fixed to a locked forward firing position, or controlled via the Target Acquisition and Designation System, TADS. On more modern A64s, the TADS/PNVS has been replaced by Lockheed Martin's Arrowhead, TADS, targeting system. U.S. Army engagement training is performed under the Aerial Weapons Scoring System integration with Longbow Apache Tactical Engagement Simulation System, AWSSLBA-TES, using live 30 mm and rocket ammunition as well as simulated Hellfire missiles. The Smart Onboard Data Interface Module, SMODIM, transmits Apache data to an AWSS ground station for gunnery evaluation. The A64's standard of performance for aerial gunnery is to achieve at least one hit for every 30 shots fired at a wheeled vehicle at a range of 800 to 1,200 m, 870 to 1,310 yd. The A64 was designed to perform in front-line environments, and to operate at night or day and during adverse weather conditions. Various sensors and onboard avionics allows the Apache to perform in these conditions. Such systems include the Target Acquisition and Designation System, Pilot Night Vision System, TADS/PNVS, Passive Infrared Countermeasures, GPS, and the AHDSS. Longbow-equipped Apaches can locate up to 256 targets simultaneously within 50 kilometers, 31 miles. In August 2012, 24 U.S. Army A64DS were equipped with the Ground Fire Acquisition System, GFAS, which detects and targets ground-based weapons fire sources in all light conditions and with a 120 degrees visual field. The GFAS consists of two sensor pods working with the A64's other sensors, and a thermographic camera that precisely locates muzzle flashes. In 2014, it was announced that new targeting and surveillance sensors were under development to provide high-resolution color imagery to crews, replacing older low-definition black and white imaging systems. Lockheed received the first contract in January 2016, upgrading the Arrowhead turret to provide higher resolution color imaging with longer ranges and a wider field of view. In 2014, the U.S. Army was adapting its Apaches for increased maritime performance as part of the Pentagon's rebalance to the Pacific. Additional avionics and sensor improvements includes an extended-range radar capable of detecting small ships in littoral environments, software adapt ions to handle maritime targets, and adding Link 16 data links for better communications with friendly assets. Armaments and configurations. The A64 is adaptable to numerous different roles within its context as close combat attack, cca. In addition to the 30mm M230E1 chain gun, the Apache carries a range of external stores and weapons on its stub-wing pylons, typically a mixture of AGM-114 Hellfire anti-tank missiles, and Hydra 70 general-purpose unguided 70mm, 2.756 in, rockets. An 18-aircraft Apache battalion can carry 288 Hellfire missiles, each capable of destroying a tank. Since 2005, the Hellfire missile is sometimes outfitted with a thermobaric warhead, designated AGM-114N. It is intended for use against ground forces and urban warfare operations. The use of thermobaric enhanced blast weapons, such as the AGM-114N, has been a point of controversy. In October 2015, the U.S. Army ordered its first batch of Advanced Precision Kill Weapon System, UPCOS, guided 70mm rockets for the Apache. Starting in the 1980s, the Stinger and AIM-9 Sidewinder air-to-air missiles and the AGM-122 sidearm anti-radiation missile were evaluated for use upon the A-64. The Stinger was initially selected. The U.S. Army was also considering the Starstreak air-to-air missile. External fuel tanks can also be carried on the stub wings to increase range and mission time. The stub wing pylons have mounting points for maintenance access. These mountings can be used to secure externally personnel for emergency transportation. Stinger missiles are often used on non-U.S. Apaches, as foreign forces do not have as many air superiority aircraft to control the skies. The A-64E initially lacked the ability to use the Stinger to make room for self-defense equipment, but the capability was re-added following a South Korean demand. The A-64E Apache has the ability to control unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, used by the U.S. Army to perform aerial scouting missions previously performed by the O-58 Kiowa. Apaches can request to take control of an RQ-7 Shadow or MQ-1C Gray Eagle from ground control stations to safely scout via data link communications. There are 4 levels of UAV interoperability. LOI 1 indirectly receives payload data, LOI 2 receives payload data through direct communication, LOI 3 deploys the UAV's armaments, and LOI 4 takes over flight control. UAVs can search for enemies and, if equipped with a laser designator, target them for the Apache or other friendly aircraft. Boeing has suggested that the A-64 could be fitted with a directed energy weapon. The company has developed a small laser weapon, initially designed to engage small UAVs, that uses a high-resolution telescope to direct a 2 to 10 kilowatts beam with the diameter of a penny out to a range of 5.4 nmi, 10.0 kilometers, 6.2 miles. On the Apache, the laser could be used to destroy enemy communications or radio equipment. On June 26, 2017, the Army and Raytheon announced they had successfully completed the first-ever helicopter-based flight demonstration of a high-energy laser system from an A-64. On July 14, 2016, it was reported that the A-64 had successfully completed testing of the MBDA Brimstone anti-armor missile. Operational history. United States Army. Early service. The U.S. Army formally accepted its first production A-64A in January 1984 and training of the first pilots began later that year. The first operational Apache unit, 7th Battalion, 17th Cavalry Brigade, began training on the A-64A in April 1986 at Fort Hood, Texas. 2 operational units with 68 A-64s first deployed to Europe in September 1987 and took part in large military exercises there. Upon fielding the Apache, capabilities such as using the FLIR for extensive night operations made it clear that it was capable of operating beyond the forward line of own troops, FLOT, to which previous attack helicopters were normally restricted. It was discovered that the Apache was coincidentally fitted with the HAV-Quick UHF radio system used by the U.S. Air Force, allowing inter-service coordination and joint operations such as the Joint Air Attack Teams, JAAT. The Apache have operated extensively with close air support, CA, aircraft, such as the U.S. Air Force Fairchild Republic A-10 Thunderbolt II and the USMC McDonnell Douglas AV-8B Harrier II, often acting as a target designator to conserve the Apache's own munitions. The Apache was first used in combat in 1989, during Operation Just Cause, the invasion of Panama. The A-64 participated in over 240 hours of combat attacking various targets, mostly at night. General Karl Steiner, the commander of the operation, commented that, "You could fire that Hellfire missile through a window from 4 miles away at night." Gulf War and Balkans. Nearly half of all U.S. Apaches were deployed to Saudi Arabia following Iraq's invasion of Kuwait in 1990. During Operation Desert Storm on January 17, 1991, 8 A-64 as guided by 4 MH-53 Pavlo IIIs destroyed part of Iraq's radar network in the operation's first attack, allowing the attack aircraft to evade detection. The Apaches each carried an asymmetric load of Hydra 70 Flechette rockets, Hellfires, and 1 auxiliary fuel tank. During the 100-hour ground war, a total of 277 A-64s took part, destroying 278 tanks, numerous armored personnel carriers and other Iraqi vehicles. 1 A-64 was lost in the war, to a rocket-propelled grenade, RPG, hit at close range. The Apache crashed but the crew survived. While effective in combat, the A-64 also presented serious logistical complications. Findings reported in 1990 stated maintenance units could not keep up with the Apache's unexpectedly high workload. To provide spare parts for combat operations, the U.S. Army unofficially grounded all other A-64s worldwide. Apaches in the theater flew only 1/5 of the planned flight hours. These problems were evident before the Gulf War. The A-64 played roles in the Balkans during separate conflicts in Bosnia and Kosovo in the 1990s. During Task Force Hawk, 24 Apaches were deployed to a land base in Albania in 1999 for combat in Kosovo. These required 26,000 tons of equipment to be transported over 550 C-17 flights, at a cost of $480 million. During these deployments, the A-64 encountered some problems, such as deficiencies in training, night vision equipment, fuel tanks, and survivability. On April 27, 1999, an Apache crashed during training in Albania due to a failure with the tail rotor, causing the fleet in the Balkans to be grounded in December 2000. In 2000, Major General Dick Cody, 101st Airborne's commanding officer, wrote a strongly worded memo to the Chief of Staff about training and equipment failures. No pilots were qualified to fly with night vision goggles, preventing nighttime operations. The Washington Post printed a front-page article on the failures, commenting, "The vaunted helicopters came to symbolize everything wrong with the Army as it enters the 21st century, its inability to move quickly, its resistance to change, its obsession with casualties, its post-Cold War identity crisis." No Apache combat missions took place in Kosovo due to fears of casualties. Afghanistan and Iraq. U.S. Apaches served in Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan from 2001. The Apache was the only Army platform capable of providing accurate CA duties for Operation Anaconda, regularly taking fire during the intense early fighting. They were typically repaired quickly. U.S. A-64Ds typically flew in Afghanistan and Iraq without the longbow radar in the absence of armored threats. On December 21, 2009, a pair of U.S. Apaches attacked a British-held base in a friendly fire incident, killing 1 British soldier. In 2006, Thomas Adams noted that Apaches often fought in small teams with little autonomy to react to threats and opportunities, requiring lengthy dialogue with command structures in an effort to centrally micromanage each unit. In 2003, the A-64 participated in the invasion of Iraq during Operation Iraqi Freedom. On March 24, 2003, 31 Apaches were damaged, 1 shot down and its crew captured, in an unsuccessful attack on an Iraqi Republican Guard armored brigade near Karbala. Iraqi tank crews had set up a flak trap among terrain and effectively employed their guns. Iraqi officials claimed a farmer with a Brno rifle shot down the Apache, but the farmer denied involvement. The helicopter came down intact and both the pilot and co-pilot were captured. The A-64D was destroyed via airstrike the following day. By the end of U.S. military operations in Iraq in December 2011, several Apache helicopters had been shot down by enemy fire, and others lost in accidents. In 2006, an Apache was downed by a Soviet-made Strela II, SA-7, in Iraq, despite the Apache being typically able to avoid such missiles. In 2007, 4 Apache helicopters were destroyed on the ground by insurgent mortar fire using web-published geotagged photographs taken by soldiers. Several A-64s were lost to accidents in Afghanistan as of 2012. Most Apaches that took heavy damage were able to continue their missions and return safely. Recent service. As of 2011, the U.S. Army Apache fleet had accumulated more than 3 million flight hours since the first prototype flew in 1975. A DoD audit released in May 2011 found that Boeing had significantly overcharged the U.S. Army on multiple occasions, ranging from 33.3% to 177,475% for routine spare parts in helicopters like the Apache. On February 21, 2013, the 1st Battalion, Attack, 229th Aviation Regiment at Joint Base Lewis McChord became the first U.S. Army unit to field the A-64E Apache Guardian. A total of 24 A-64E were received by mid-2013. On November 27, 2013, the A-64E achieved Initial Operating Capability, IOC. In March 2014, the 1st to 229th Attack Reconnaissance Battalion deployed 24 A-64Es to Afghanistan in the type's first combat deployment. From April through September 2014, A-64Es in combat maintained an 88% readiness rate. The unit's deployment ended in November 2014, with the A-64E accumulating 11,000 flight hours, each helicopter averaging 66 hours per month. The A-64E flies 20 miles per hour, 32 kilometers per hour, faster than the A-64D, cutting response time by 57%, and has better fuel efficiency, increasing time on station from 2.5 to 3 hours to 3 to 3.5 hours. Taliban forces, which were familiar with the A-64D and based their tactics accordingly, were surprised by the A-64E arriving and attacking sooner and for longer periods. A-64Es also worked with medium and large unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, to find targets and maintain positive ID, conducting 60% of the unit's direct fire engagements in conjunction with UAVs. Guardian pilots often controlled UAVs and accessed their video feeds to use their greater operating altitudes and endurance to see the battle space from standoff ranges. The Army is implementing a plan to move all Apaches from the Army Reserve and National Guard to the active Army to serve as scout helicopters to replace the O-58 Kiowa. Using the A-64 to scout would be less expensive than Kiowa upgrades or purchasing a new scout helicopter. A-64Es can control UAVs like the MQ-1C Gray Eagle to perform aerial scouting missions. A 2010 study found the teaming of Apaches and UAVs was the most cost-effective alternative to a new helicopter and would meet 80% of reconnaissance requirements, compared to 20% with existing O-58s and 50% with upgraded O-58s. National Guard units, who would lose their attack helicopters, criticized the proposal. In March 2015, the first heavy attack reconnaissance unit was formed with 24 Apaches and 12 Shadow UAVs. In July 2014, the Pentagon announced that Apaches had been dispatched to Baghdad to protect embassy personnel from Islamic State militant attacks. On October 4, 2014, Apaches began performing missions in Operation Inherent Resolve against Islamic State ground forces. In October 2014, U.S. Army A-64s and Air Force fighters participated in 4 airstrikes on Islamic State units northeast of Fallujah. In June 2016, Apaches were used in support of the Iraqi Army's Mosul offensive and provided support during the Battle of Mosul, sometimes flying night missions supporting Iraqi operations. Israel. The Israeli Air Force, IAF, first received A-64s in 1990, for a total fleet of 42. There was some controversy over the Air Force's choice to purchase Apaches over upgrading existing A-1 Cobra attack helicopters. In 2000, Israel was interested in acquiring up to 48 A-64ds, but U.S. reluctance to share the software source code complicated the prospect. In April 2005, Boeing delivered the first A-64D to the IAF. In 2001, the U.S. government was allegedly investigating misuse of the Apache and other US-supplied military equipment against Palestinian leaders and facilities. In 2009, an arranged sale of 6 A-64ds was reportedly blocked by the Obama administration, pending interagency review, over concerns the helicopters may pose a threat to civilian Palestinians in Gaza. In IAF service, the A-64A was named as the Pathan, Hebrew, for Cobra, while the A-64D was named Seraph, also as Seraph, Hebrew for venomous/fiery winged serpent. During the 1990s, Israeli A-64s frequently attacked Hezbollah outposts in Lebanon. On April 13, 1996, during Operation Grapes of Wrath, an Apache fired 2 Hellfire missiles at an ambulance in Lebanon, killing 6 civilians. During the Al-Aqsa Intifada in the 2000s, A-64s were used to kill senior Hamas figures, such as Ahmed Yassin, Abdelaziz al-Rantizi, and Adnan al-Ghul. On May 24, 2001, a privately owned Lebanese registered Cessna 152 flew 15 minutes down the coast over Israeli airspace, refused to identify and respond to contact and a warning shot before it was shot down by an IAF A-64A. IAF Apaches played a prominent role in the 2006 Lebanon War, launching strikes into Lebanon targeting Hezbollah forces. There have also been accidents involving the Apache helicopter in Israeli service. During the Lebanon War in 2006, 2 IAF A-64A helicopters collided, killing 1 pilot and critically wounding 3. In another incident in the conflict, an IAF A-64D crashed due to a malfunction in the main rotor, killing the 2 crew. In late 2007, the Israeli Air Force put further purchases and deliveries of A-64ds on hold during an investigation upon the aircraft's performance envelope. However, Israeli officials have since praised the Apache for its role in Operation Cast Lead in 2008, against Hamas in Gaza. In recent years, Israeli Apaches have been used to patrol the skies over Gaza. Strike operations against insurgents using these helicopters has become a frequent occurrence. Since recent orders of new A-64ds have been blocked, Israel has pursued upgrades to its A-64A fleet. In June 2010, Israel decided not to upgrade all A-64s to deconfiguration, due to funding constraints and lack of U.S. cooperation. In December 2010, the IAF was examining the adoption of a new missile system as a cheaper and lightweight complement to the Hellfire missile, either the American Hydra 70 or the Canadian CRV-7. In 2013, Israeli A-64s had been receiving a comprehensive upgrade of their avionics and electrical systems. The A-64s are being upgraded to the A-64AI configuration, which is near the A-64D standard. The Israeli Apache can carry Spike anti-tank missiles instead of the Hellfire. Israeli A-64 helicopters occasionally saw use in the air-to-air role. The first operational air-to-air kill with an Apache took place on May 24, 2001, after a civilian Cessna 152 aircraft entered Israeli airspace from Lebanon, with unknown intentions and refusing to answer or comply with air traffic control, ATC, repeated warnings to turn back. An Israeli Air Force A-64A fired on the Cessna, resulting in its complete disintegration. The second operational air-to-air kill with an Apache occurred on February 10, 2018, after an Iranian UAV entered Israeli airspace from Syria. An Israeli Air Force A-64 launched a missile at the UAV, destroying it. The latest A-64DI has Israeli systems integrated in the Saraf, including an ELTA communications suite, Elbit mission management system, Rafael combat net system and Elisra self-protection suite. United Kingdom. The UK currently operates a modified version of the Apache longbow, initially called the Westland WA-64 Apache. It is designated the Apache A1 by the British Army. Westland built 67 WA-64 Apaches under license from Boeing, following a competition between the Eurocopter Tiger and the Apache for the British Army's new attack helicopter in 1995. Important deviations made by Augusta Westland from the U.S. Apache variants include changing to more powerful Rolls-Royce engines, and the addition of a folding blade assembly for use on naval ships. On July 11, 2016, the UK Ministry of Defence confirmed a $2.3 billion order for 50 A-64ES to be built in Mesa, Arizona. The purchase is via a Foreign Military Sales (FMS) agreement with the US government. Leonardo Helicopters in the UK is to maintain the current fleet of Apaches until 2023 to 2024, with a long-term plan for Leonardo and other UK companies to do most of the work on the new fleet. The deal includes an initial support contract for maintenance of the new helicopters, along with spare parts and training simulators for UK pilots. The first UK helicopters are due off the US production line in early 2020 and will begin entering service with the British Army in 2022. To further guarantee value for money, systems from the current Apache fleet, such as the Modernise Target Acquisition and Designation System, and the Longbow Fire Control Radar, will be reused and incorporated into the new helicopters where possible. Approval for the remanufacture of 50 of the UK's WA-64 Mk1 fleet to A-64E Apache Guardian standard had been given by the Defence Security Cooperation Agency in August 2015. The aircraft will utilise the General Electric T700 engine rather than the Turbomeca RTM322 from the current fleet, the first off-the-shelf purchase of a GE engine by the UK Ministry of Defence. Netherlands. The Dutch government initially showed an interest in acquiring Apache helicopters in the late 1980s, where it stated that it may purchase as many as 52. A competition held in 19.
Please subscribe and thanks for watching.